In this second half, I'm going to talk a bit more about some of the practicalities of meeting for worship. In particular, I'm going to talk about how we prepare for meeting, or sometimes how we don't prepare for meeting. Something about the room that you might find when you come to a Quaker meeting for worship. Something about how we come into worship, how the meeting for worship starts. And something about the sort of practicalities of what to happen during meeting. So how to sit, how to breathe, that kind of thing. There's a lovely phrase in the Advice and Queries that says that you should come to meeting with heart and mind prepared. It helpfully doesn't tell you exactly how to prepare your heart and mind, which leaves, as with many things in Quakers, open to your individual discernment about what the right way forward is. But I've certainly found that coming to meeting not straight after your other activities, but taking some time to put yourself from the state that you're in during the rest of the week into the state that you want to be in worship is important. I find that meeting works best for me when I'm as calm and as undistracted as possible. And I mean, my regular meeting for worship is on a Wednesday night in central London, and I tend to go straight from work. And if I'm not careful, I can end up very busy from work and running down to meeting because I'm always late, because I'm late for everything, and then coming into meeting right on the moment when meeting starts, or even a few minutes afterwards, and finding that then everybody else is beginning to settle into worship, and I'm still taking off my coat and panting and trying to get my brain to settle down. And that's not very helpful. What this isn't is a set of empty instructions. When it says, come to meeting with heart and mind prepared, it's not because somehow it is a good thing for Quakers to come with heart and mind prepared. It's that it actually makes a difference to our understanding of worship. And I've found this. When I come in prepared, my experience of worship is richer and it's deeper, and it tends to start quicker. You don't tend to spend as much time at the beginning trying to settle into worship. If you come in already settled, you get a much longer and richer experience of worship. And there are lots of ways of doing it. Young Friends General Meeting, who I talked about before, often sing beforehand. When they have their main meeting on a Sunday morning, they'll often go out into the garden for half an hour beforehand and sing spiritual rounds of one kind or another, different kinds of songs, and that's a really good way of settling. So it's not, you don't have to be calm, but you can be. Quietness, I find, is one of the best ways of settling in. Very still, individual quietness. Okay, so you've come in, you've stilled your heart and mind a little bit, you've come down to meeting for worship. What are you likely to find? Well, there's probably a library or a lobby outside, not in all cases, but in most. And then you'll come into meeting for worship, and you'll find that it will just be an ordinary plain room. There's nothing special about a Quaker meeting for worship. The meeting room isn't consecrated. It's just a room. And some meetings for worship happen in people's front rooms, or they happen in community centres. Some of them have their own meeting houses, like this one. But in any case, it's just an ordinary plain room. You'll normally find the chairs arranged in a circle, because Quakers like to worship facing inwards towards each other and as part of a group. And, or you might find that they're in a square. If it's old Quaker benches and they don't fit round in a circle, you'll often find them arranged in a square shape. There'll normally be a table, and it'll have on it normally a copy of Quaker Faith and Practice, and maybe Advice and Queries and a Bible or two, maybe some other religious books, depending on where you go. And there'll often be a vase of flowers in the middle, which has no special significance at all. It's just that Quakers, for some reason, like having flowers in their meeting for worship, so we do. But it's an ordinary room with an ordinary table and an ordinary circle of chairs. And so you come into this ordinary room, and the first thing you need to realise is that worship starts when the first person enters the room. So you don't come in and then wait for it to start. It's starting as soon as you arrive. And if you're the first person in, you can start worship. You can just sit down and start being quiet and calm together. You can take any seat you choose. If it's your first meeting for worship and you think you might want to run out in terror halfway through, then feel free to take a chair at the back near the door. But there are no reserved seats. Nobody's special in a Quaker meeting. And you can sit wherever you choose. So then you've sat down, you're experiencing meeting for worship for the first time. Quite often people say, well, how should I sit in meeting for worship? How should I breathe in meeting for worship? What is it that we should do? And the simple answer is, there is no straightforward answer that works for everybody. It's a very personal thing, what happens. Personally, I find it's important to have a very comfortable position. If you're going to be trying to sit still for an hour, you don't want to be sitting awkwardly with your legs sort of tucked up over the way, because otherwise you'll find that you get cramp and have to straighten them back out again. I find that I tend to fiddle with my hands if I'm not careful, and I find that if I just hold my hands together in front of me, I'll find that can help me sometimes. I can sometimes visualise a sense of energy, a sense of spirit coming up from that, and it helps me to sit upwards with my shoulders back, which I also find comfortable. And I personally find that I like to have my eyes open during meeting for worship. A lot of Quakers have them closed, but I find that I'm in danger of falling asleep if I worship for an hour with my eyes closed. So I don't do that. I have it open. But to be honest, the right answer for what you do in meeting for worship with your hands and your eyes and your shoulders and your legs and where you sit is what works for you. There is no discipline to say, this is how Quakers do it. But there are things that different Quakers have found helpful. So look around, see what other people are doing. Try copying, see if it works for you. I think the important thing about Quakers is that the worship is unique and individual. And that goes for how you sit, and it goes for how you worship, and it goes for how you come in. But I hope that your experience of worship, when you have it, is as powerful for you as it sometimes is for me.